Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Tensei Slime Light Novel Summary Series on AniMonolith. Following the events of the previous 5 months had passed since Walpurgis, and although various things happened during that time, life in Tempest remained relatively peaceful. Michael still showed no signs of making a move, and with defenses steadily strengthening, the atmosphere never became too heavy, especially now that Rimuru had secured his trump card. Still, when Rimuru first returned from Walpurgis, he had been a nervous wreck, unable to eat at night, unable to sleep during the day, because the enemy lurked in the shadows while he himself stood exposed in the light. That was why Rimuru tried to contact Dino as soon as possible. The method was simple. Use the curse Zegion had engraved on him. You might remember that when Dino fled the labyrinth, Zegion slapped a special mark on him. Rimuru simply asked Ciel whether the curse could be used to contact Dino, and Ciel casually replied, "Of course." Rimuru was stunned. It was far easier than he expected. He contacted Dino immediately. The goal was obvious: extract information. Rimuru knew Dino too well. Keeping that lazy man near the enemy base was far more useful than bringing him back to Tempest, where he would only help Ramirez with trivial chores and drain Rimuru's wallet dry. Yes, there must be work to earn your keep, but Dino always did very little and ate very much. In the end, the guy got caught in Rimuru's net and ended up being a two-sided spy. And honestly, Rimuru was more worried about useless allies than competent enemies, Dino being a prime example. Simply by standing with the enemy, Dino was already doing Tempest a great service. "Hey, Dino-kun, how are things on your end?" Hearing Rimuru's sudden voice echo inside his head, Dino panicked. "Rimuru-san?" "Yep, it's me." This wasn't just Rimuru messing with him. Rimuru wanted Dino to fully understand who was in control here, and who wasn't. "What do you want? I'm very busy," Dino complained irritably. Rimuru smirked. "You're not slipping away from me, Dino-kun." No, it's just a simple conversation. I heard you picked a fight with me, right?" No, I mean, I did, but it's not as dramatic as people say." "I don't want excuses. What matters most is sincerity." At that, Dino began to panic. He had no idea what sincerity Rimuru was referring to. "I heard you guided intruders into Ramirez's labyrinth, went on a rampage, and even plotted to kidnap Ramirez. Didn't you?" Rimuru pressed him further, cornering him. "Well, I mean, I had to. I was ordered to. Didn't I just say I don't want excuses? I'm sorry." Honestly, in a situation like this, it was hard to tell who the villain really was. But since both of them were demon lords, Rimuru felt zero guilt about acting high-handed. Normally, what you did would be unforgivable. But I'll overlook it this once, if Dino-kun apologizes. "Seriously? Of course I'm sorry. I just have my own problems, and things happen. You know that, right?" Rimuru replied that he understood. After all, Dino was being controlled by Michael. That revelation shocked Dino to his core. It made sense. Michael's domination was extremely subtle. The target often never realized they were being manipulated. In Dino's case, his chronic laziness probably saved him. He obeyed orders half-heartedly and never fully invested his will into anything. Wait, seriously? I'm being controlled?" "Yep." "I didn't think you were acting of your own free will." Rimuru then explained Michael's abilities and asked whether Dino had an angel-type ultimate skill. "No way! I really do have the ultimate skill, Heavenly King Astarte." Rimuru didn't fully understand Astarte, but it was definitely an angelic skill, meaning Dino was a perfect target for Michael. Fortunately, Dino didn't seem completely subjugated. He hadn't pledged loyalty, so the domination might collapse sooner or later. Rimuru had a feeling Dino would break free eventually, simply because of his personality. "What do I do now? Like you said, I don't feel anger toward Michael. I don't feel like betraying him, but I don't feel like joining you either. I only realize now how weird that is." This conversation was turning out to be a huge success. Rimuru had identified Dino's skill and made him aware of the manipulation. Riding this momentum, Rimuru dropped a big theoretical bomb. "Well, I have a hypothesis. If you had a demon-type skill to counter an angel-type one, you might be able to cancel them out and escape Michael's control." He added that there were other possible methods, but those depended on luck, so he wouldn't recommend them. In truth, he was referencing Chloe's case. Manus Chronoa struggled to break the control circuit of Hope King Sariel, allowing Chloe herself to avoid being dominated. But that was ultimately luck too, and Rimuru was lying. It wasn't that he didn't trust Dino. The problem was, Dino was still under Michael's control. Rimuru would never reveal his real plans while an eavesdropping Michael remained a possibility. I get it. Being controlled really doesn't sit right with me. I'll try to see if I can do something about it. Hey, don't overdo it. Octogram and Michael are heading toward all-out war. The best thing you can do right now is nothing. Just act normal so you don't draw suspicion. Rimuru's real intention was simple. He wanted Dino to keep relaxing and casually slipping him information. But Rimuru would never fully trust him. Zagion's curse wasn't strong enough to block lies, and Dino might unknowingly report everything to Michael. Since Rimuru couldn't tell which was stronger, Zagion's curse or Michael's domination, he refused to rely on uncertain intel. Still, he was not going to let Dino slack off completely. Is that really okay? Dino asked, sounding relieved and honestly happy. Being told to just sit there and do nothing was music to the ears of a lazy man like him. Rimuru sighed. Dino really was a sweet, simple guy, but that didn't mean Rimuru planned to be kind to him. Thinking along those lines, Rimuru spoke gently, as if he truly cared about Dino. I also thought it would be difficult for you to betray Michael. That's right. I don't want to betray him, but leaking information doesn't bother me at all. Rimuru froze for a moment. Is this really okay? He didn't want to betray Michael, yet he didn't mind giving away intel? Something about that was fundamentally wrong. Then again, Dino had never been reliable in the first place, but that, in its own way, made things even more convenient. If Dino was willing to walk straight into the role of a spy, Rimuru certainly wasn't going to stop him. Still, Rimuru reminded him, No, really, it's fine. You don't have to do anything. Seriously? But what about that sincerity you mentioned earlier? With just a few smooth lines, Rimuru had manipulated a chronically lazy man into offering to work. Truly impressive. Using Dino's innocent, gullible nature turned out to be the perfect strategy. At this point, it was questionable who the real villain in this story was. Well, even if you don't participate in the battle, it's practically the same as weakening Michael's forces. Oh, that makes sense. It was slightly annoying how easily Dino accepted that, but since it was Dino, Rimuru felt he could forgive it. If you insist, then I'll tell you anything you need to know. That would be perfect. Just like that, Dino became a spy, without even realizing he had become a spy. Okay, I'll keep an eye on things. If you need information about anything, just let me know. Is that good? That's fine. By the way, what's Michael doing right now? Do you know when he'll be ready to move? Now that Dino had willingly offered information, Rimuru took the opportunity to ask his real questions. He could detect when Dino was lying, through tone, emotion, or simply Dino's transparent personality, so the intel would be reliable as long as Dino wasn't reporting back to Michael. Yeah, I think he's asleep right now. He absorbed Velgrin's power, and he also took Velzard's power. The strain must have been too much, so he fell dormant. That was extremely valuable information. Rimuru had thought Michael would weaken Velzard first, but the impatient bastard had gone straight for absorption. Velzard had exchanged a few blows with Guy, but neither had fought seriously, so she wasn't weakened enough to justify such recklessness. The overabundance of power must have overwhelmed Michael's capacity. In other words, the dragon factor had been taken from her. If that was true, then Michael's evolution must be accelerating. Rimuru mentally prepared himself for the worst. And what about Velzard? He asked. Velzard is recovering too. She'll probably be back to normal in a few days. Rimuru nodded. At least there was no danger of an immediate surprise attack. Still, the resilience of a true dragon was unbelievable, recovering from something like that in only a few days. It also didn't perfectly match what Ciel had concluded earlier during Walpurgis. Ciel had stated that losing the dragon factor should erase one's existence, as in Velgrin's case. But Dino was now claiming that Velzard was merely recovering. There was clearly a discrepancy between chapters. Perhaps Michael had only stolen her power but not the dragon factor itself. Or perhaps the story's information simply conflicted. In any case, Rimuru kept the possibility in mind. Returning to the conversation, Rimuru felt he had gotten more than enough information for now. He thanked Dino, intending to wrap things up. It's nothing compared to what you've done for me, Dino replied. Honestly, getting a lazy man like Dino to cooperate this enthusiastically was quite a feat. Rimuru wanted to ask more, such as the enemy's total numbers, but decided not to push his luck. A long-term informant was far more valuable than squeezing Dino dry all at once. Well then, I'll contact you later. Oh, I just remembered. Could you tell Ramirez I'm sorry? It was a last-minute request, but Rimuru declined without hesitation. Ah, you can apologize yourself later. She's pretty angry and said she'll use all 48 of her special moves on you. 48, my ass. She can only do dropkicks. I don't know. That's just what she said. Dino burst out laughing, and with that, their conversation ended. Afterward, Rimuru relayed all the new intel to the other demon lords, making it clear that Dino was the source. Thanks to that, the overall tension eased considerably. They now had time to finish preparing before the Great War truly began. Even so, Rimuru did not rule out the possibility that everything was a trap set by Michael. But he refused to become like Guy, overly cautious to the point of inaction. Sometimes being too careful was exactly how one fell into the enemy's trap. So in the end, he decided to proceed naturally. Rimuru might be kind-hearted and easygoing, but he also carried plenty of personal flaws. Selfishness, stinginess, slipperiness, and most notably, the bad habit of leaving things for later. For example, when he had summer homework, he would work furiously at the beginning and then leave the rest until the very last day. If he still didn't finish, he would go to school, act fearless, and simply claim he forgot. When told to turn it in the next day, he would complete what he could and then say he lost the rest. His motto had always been, do your best, but also accept what is impossible. Could he have worked steadily every day? Of course not, because that required constant mental focus. Some people could do that, but others needed fun, breaks, and distractions. Rimuru was simply the latter. But back to the main topic. Rimuru asked Dino to contact him every morning to check whether Michael had awakened. It was practically the level of concern one had for a lover. He believed Michael couldn't monitor everything. Controlling his subordinates' skills was one thing, but reading their thoughts was another. Processing that much information would be absurdly inefficient. Even in Veldora's side story, when monsters possessed human bodies, they could understand relationships and roles, but not day-to-day conversations, as those required too much cognitive load. Ciel had also affirmed this. Communication through the soul corridor was possible, but reading every thought was impossible. One could sense surface emotions, fear, anxiety, hesitation, but not the deeper layers of the mind. However, if asked a direct question, one might involuntarily reveal the truth. In other words, if Michael ever suspected Dino and asked the right questions, Dino might unintentionally spill everything. Even so, Rimuru had already prepared for that scenario, and he chose to trust Dino, at least to a reasonable extent. For the past 5 months, while Michael remained inactive, full-scale preparations for the final battle continued just as promised at Walpurgis. A cooperative system within the Octagram had been established, and the Demon Lords were supposed to hold detailed discussions regarding their respective territories so they could respond immediately once the war began. But in reality, the Demon Lords meant only Rimuru. The others were simply too lazy. For Rimuru, the agreement to travel and assist each other actually held great meaning. It was beneficial for Tempest's future growth as well. But coordinating with a group of selfish, responsibility-dodging Demon Lords was anything but easy. Anyone who had seen how chaotic that banquet was would immediately understand the struggle. According to their plan, Rimuru would create teleportation magic circles in each Demon Lord's territory. So after Walpurgis, he asked Mizeri to guide him around every nation and help him record suitable coordinates for teleportation. Of course, all the Demon Lords agreed to this. Rimuru had already been to Guy's Frost Palace before, as well as the sacred city of runes in Luminous's holy empire of Lubelius. He had also visited Malim's still unnamed country many times. That left only 2 places he had never set foot in, Leon's El Dorado and Dagruel's Damarganya, and thus began a journey filled with unexpected sights, comedic moments, and plenty of surprises for Rimuru. But the rest of those amusing adventures will be saved for the next video. Thank you for watching, and see you all in the next one.